In the gleaming skyscrapers of New York City, Shane Harrington stared at the glowing screen of his laptop, his heart pounding like a drum in his chest. The email from his accountant had just confirmed his worst nightmare. Millions of dollars were missing from Apex Innovations' accounts, and every trail led straight back to the one person he had trusted with his life, Troy Lawson, the man he called his boyfriend. But as the initial shock began to fade, Shane realized this wasn't just about money. It was the beginning of a revelation that would change everything he thought he knew about love, power, and himself. 2 years earlier, at a glittering charity gala in the ballroom of the Plaza Hotel, Shane had first locked eyes with Troy across a sea of tailored suits and sparkling champagne flutes. Shane, then only 26, had just closed his company's Series B funding round, turning his fintech startup into one of the hottest names in Lower Manhattan. He stood tall at 5'11", with the kind of quiet confidence that came from building something from nothing in a city that never slept. His family back in rural Texas still sent polite but distant holiday cards, never quite forgiving the fact that their only son preferred man. Troy, 3 years older, moved through the crowd like he belonged everywhere and nowhere at once. With his easy smile, warm brown eyes, and the effortless charm of someone who had talked his way into every room that mattered, Troy introduced himself as a freelance financial strategist. Within minutes, they were laughing over shared stories of late-night pitch decks and impossible deadlines. By the end of that night, they had exchanged numbers, and within a month, Troy had quietly slipped into every corner of Shane's life. He helped review contracts, offered late-night advice on investor calls, and eventually moved into the sleek Tribeca loft that overlooked the Hudson River. Shane had never felt so seen. For the first time, the weight of being the youngest CEO in his sector didn't feel crushing. Troy made it feel exciting. They cooked pasta together on Sundays, argued over which documentary to watch, and stole kisses in the elevator on the way to board meetings. Friends at the company whispered that Troy was good for Shane, that the boss finally looked relaxed. Even the board seemed impressed when Troy suggested a few strategic partnerships that brought in quick capital. Yet small cracks had begun to appear so gradually that Shane convinced himself they were nothing. Troy started asking for access to certain vendor accounts just to help with due diligence. He encouraged Shane to greenlight a series of high-risk investments in overseas tech ventures, deals that promised massive returns but required moving funds quickly and quietly. When Shane hesitated, Troy would pull him close, whisper that trust was the foundation of everything they had built together, and Shane would relent because the alternative felt like doubting the one person who truly understood him. Now, staring at the spreadsheet that showed $7.4 million funneled through shell companies with Troy's digital fingerprints all over them, Shane felt the floor tilt beneath him. He closed the laptop, walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows, and pressed his forehead against the cool glass. Below, yellow taxis crawled through the canyon of buildings like blood cells through veins. His reflection stared back, tired eyes, stubble he hadn't bothered to shave, the face of a man who had believed love could shield him from a world. The front door clicked open. Troy stepped in carrying 2 paper bags from their favorite Thai place, the scent of lemongrass and coconut filling the loft. "Hey, babe, I got extra spring rolls because I know you." He stopped when he saw Shane's expression. The bags lowered slowly. "What's wrong?" Shane turned, voice steadier than he expected. "We need to talk." Troy set the food down, concern etching lines across his forehead. He crossed the room in 3 strides and reached for Shane's hand, but Shane stepped back. The distance felt like miles. "The accounts," Shane said. "The Cayman transfers. The offshore LLCs. It's all there, Troy. Every dollar." For a split second, Troy's face went blank, the practiced mask of a man caught mid-sentence. Then the charm resurfaced, softer this time, laced with urgency. "Shane, listen. I can explain everything. Those deals were supposed to double our money. I was protecting us, protecting you, from the board breathing down your neck. You know how cutthroat this industry is." Shane's chest tightened. The man who had held him through investor rejections, who had kissed the worry lines from his forehead at 3 in the morning, was looking at him now with the same eyes but different intent. "You use my company like your personal ATM. Shane whispered, while I was signing my name on every document, believing you were on my side. Troy's shoulders dropped. He sank onto the leather couch, elbows on knees. I never meant to hurt you. I got in over my head with some old debts. Nothing that should have touched us. But once the ball started rolling, his voice cracked, the first genuine fracture Shane had ever heard. I love you. That's real. Everything else was just noise. The words hung between them like smoke after a fire. Shane wanted to believe them. Part of him still reached for the version of Troy who had made him feel invincible. But the numbers on the screen didn't lie, and neither did the hollow ache spreading through his ribs. Outside, the city kept moving, sirens wailing, lights flickering on in 1,000 windows, oblivious to the quiet earthquake happening 23 floors above the street. Shane walked to the kitchen island, poured 2 glasses of water he didn't drink, and set one in front of Troy. I need time, he said, and you need to leave tonight. Troy looked up, eyes glistening. Shane, please. The single word carried every ounce of exhaustion Shane had been carrying for months. Troy stood, hesitated, then picked up his keys. The door closed behind him with a soft click that sounded final. Alone, Shane slid to the floor, back against the cabinet, and let the first tears fall. The young boss who had built an empire from a dorm room idea was suddenly just a man whose heart had been used as collateral. Yet somewhere beneath the pain, a tiny spark flickered. Not anger, not yet, but the first hint of something sharper. A question forming in the dark. What if the power he had handed away could be taken back? The night stretched long. Shane didn't sleep. Instead, he opened his laptop again, this time with new purpose, and began tracing every transaction Troy had touched. By dawn, the city outside was waking. But inside the loft, Shane Harrington was already changing, quietly, deliberately, into someone the world had not yet met. The next morning, Shane walked into the Apex Innovations headquarters on the 27th floor of the Hudson Yards Tower with the same measured stride he always used, but everything felt different. The open-plan office buzzed with the usual energy, developers typing furiously, account managers on headsets, the smell of fresh coffee from the break room. No one knew the CEO had spent the night unraveling the threads of his own life. He called an emergency meeting with his CFO, Rachel Chun, and his closest friend on the leadership team, Marcus Rivera. The glass conference room overlooked the High Line Park where joggers already moved like colorful dots against the green. Rachel slid a thick folder across the polished table. It's worse than the preliminary report, she said quietly. 7.4 million is confirmed. Another 2.1 potentially hidden in layered entities, all authorized under your signature. But the routing was routed through Troy's personal consulting firm. Marcus leaned forward, dark eyes serious. Shane, this isn't just theft. It's structured to look like strategic investments you approved. If the board gets wind of it before we contain it, they could call for a vote of no confidence. Shane stared at the folder, but saw Troy's face instead. The easy smile from their first date, the way he had traced patterns on Shane's back after long days. The memory stung, but he forced it down. I want a full forensic audit, quietly, and freeze every account Troy had access to. Rachel hesitated. Freezing will raise flags with our Series C investors. They're already skittish after the last valuation dip. Then we tell them the truth in stages, Shane replied. No more secrets. The words tasted like steel. For 2 years, he had let Troy shape the narrative, let love blur the lines between personal and professional. No longer. That afternoon, he met his mother on a video call from her kitchen in Plano, Texas. She still kept the same floral wallpaper from his childhood, the same worried crease between her brows whenever his sexuality came up in conversation. Honey, you sound exhausted. Is everything okay with him? She never said Troy's name anymore. Shane almost laughed at the irony. We're taking a break, Mom. Business complications. She sighed the sigh of a woman who had prayed for years that her son would find the right path. Maybe this is a sign. You know your father, and I only want what's best. Come home for a weekend. Clear your head. The invitation felt like a lifeline and a cage at once. Shane promised to think about it, ended the call, and stared at the family photo on his desk, the 4 of them at his college graduation, his smile forced, their pride cautious. He had spent his entire adult life proving he could succeed without their approval. Now the success itself was under threat because he had trusted the wrong man. By evening, the office had emptied. Shane stayed behind, lights dimmed, reviewing every email Troy had ever sent about growth opportunities. Patterns emerged. Troy had steered him toward 3 specific venture partners who all shared the same offshore banking ties. The realization landed like a punch, calculated, not impulsive. A soft knock pulled him from a screen. Marcus stood in the doorway, holding 2 coffees. "Figured you'd still be here. Thought you might need this." He set one down and dropped into the chair opposite. "Talk to me, man. Not as your VP, as your friend." Shane rubbed his temples. "I loved him, Marcus. Really loved him. And he looked me in the eye every single day, knowing what he was doing." Marcus nodded slowly. "Love makes us blind, but strength makes us dangerous. Whatever you decide next, I got your back. The whole team does. You're not just the boss. You're the reason most of us are here." The words settled something inside Shane. For the first time since the discovery, he felt the ground steady beneath him. He opened a new spreadsheet and began drafting a recovery plan. Asset recalls, legal retainers, internal restructuring. Each line he typed felt like reclaiming a piece of himself. At midnight, he finally left the building. The streets were quieter now, the September air carrying the first hint of autumn. He walked the long way home, passing the cafe where Troy had once surprised him with birthday cannoli. The memory hurt less than it had the night before. Pain was shifting, sharpening into focus. Back in the loft, the silence felt different, cleaner. Shane changed into sweats, brewed a fresh pot of coffee, and sat at the dining table with his laptop. He opened a secure folder labeled Contingency and began listing every leverage point he still controlled. Voting shares, key client contracts, personal guarantees on the company line of credit. Troy had taken money. Shane still held the keys to the kingdom. By the time the sun rose again over the East River, the young boss had mapped out the first moves of a counter-campaign that no one, not Troy, not the board, not even his own doubts, would see coming. The betrayal had cracked him open, but what spilled out was no longer fear. It was resolve. 3 days later, Troy showed up at the lobby security desk with a duffel bag and the same pleading expression that had once melted Shane's resistance. The guard called up, and Shane stared at the monitor for a long moment before authorizing the elevator. When the doors opened, Troy stepped in cautiously, eyes scanning the familiar space as if it might have changed overnight. "I just want to talk," Troy said, setting the bag down. 5 minutes. After everything we've been through, I deserve that much." Shane stood by the kitchen island, arms crossed. The city lights twinkled behind him like an audience waiting for the next act. "You deserve whatever I decide you deserve," he answered quietly. "That's the part you keep forgetting." Troy winced. "I know I messed up. Badly. But those investments, I truly believe they would work. When they didn't, I panicked. Instead of coming to you, I tried to fix it myself. Stupid. Arrogant. I'm sorry." He took a step closer. "I love you, Shane. The real kind that doesn't disappear when things get hard." For a heartbeat, Shane felt the old pull. The memory of lazy Sunday mornings, Troy's laugh echoing off the high ceilings, the safety of believing someone had his back. Then he remembered the forged signatures, the late-night calls Troy had taken in the bathroom with the door locked, the way money had vanished the same week Shane had proposed they buy a weekend place upstate together. "Love doesn't drain someone's company dry," Shane said. "Love doesn't treat trust like a line item on a balance sheet." Troy's shoulders slumped. "What do you want me to do?" "Name it. I'll sign whatever papers, pay back whatever I can. Just don't throw us away." Shane slid a single document across the island, a formal demand letter drafted by Rachel's team. First, return every cent you can access today. Second, resign any advisory role you still claim. Third, stay away from Apex and everyone who works there. Troy read the page, color draining from his face. "You're serious." Deadly. The silence stretched until Troy finally nodded, eyes glistening. "I never wanted to become the villain in your story." "You didn't become it," Shane replied. "You chose it." Troy picked up the duffel and left without another word. The elevator doors closed, and Shane exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He walked to the window and watched the street below until Troy emerged, hailing a cab. The taillights disappeared into traffic, and something inside Shane shifted permanently. The grief was still there, but it no longer owned him. The following week became a blur of controlled chaos. Board members asked pointed questions during the quarterly review. Shane answered every one with calm precision, revealing just enough to show he was on top of the situation without admitting full liability. Investors received updated forecasts that painted a picture of aggressive recovery. Behind the scenes, Rachel and Marcus worked around the clock, pulling records and preparing affidavits. One evening, Shane's phone lit up with a number he hadn't seen in months. His older sister Lauren calling from Dallas. "Mom told me something's going on. You okay?" He told her the edited version, leaving out the romantic details. Lauren listened without interruption, then said, "You've always been the strong one, little brother. But strong doesn't mean invincible. If you need a place to crash, the guest room is yours." The offer surprised him. Their relationship had been polite but distant since he came out. Yet here she was, offering sanctuary. "Thanks," he said. "I might take you up on that soon." That night, he booked a flight for the following weekend. A short trip home might give him perspective, or at least remind him why he had fought so hard to leave in the first place. Meanwhile, Troy's absence created a vacuum that the entire company felt. Whispers circulated in the break room. A few junior analysts who had worked closely with Troy suddenly requested transfers. Shane approved every one without comment. Power, he was learning, wasn't loud announcements or corner offices. It was the quiet accumulation of choices no one else could make for him. By Friday, the forensic report landed on his desk. Troy had siphoned funds through 3 separate consulting invoices and 1 fake vendor. The total was higher than first estimated. Shane stared at the figure until the numbers blurred, then picked up the phone and called the corporate attorney. "File the complaint," he said, quietly. "I want options, not headlines." The attorney promised discretion. When Shane hung up, the loft felt larger, emptier, but also undeniably his. He poured a single glass of whiskey, raised it to the empty couch where Troy used to sit, and drank to the man he was becoming, the one who no longer needed anyone else's permission to stand tall. The flight to Dallas felt like stepping through a time portal. Shane landed at DFW, rented a car, and drove the familiar highway toward Plano under a wide Texas sky that stretched forever. The family house looked exactly as he remembered. White siding, wraparound porch, his mother's rose bushes still blooming defiantly in October heat. His father waited on the steps, arms folded, expression unreadable. Inside, the smell of pot roast and fresh cornbread wrapped around him like an old blanket. Dinner passed in careful conversation, work updates, weather, anything but the real reason he had come. Later, on the back porch with his father sipping iced tea, the older man finally spoke. "Your mother says there's trouble with that fellow you were seeing." Shane nodded. "There is." His father stared out at the dark yard. "I never understood it, son. Still don't. But I do understand losing something you built with your own hands. Whatever happens, don't let anybody take your name off the door." The words landed heavier than expected. Shane had spent years waiting for outright rejection. Instead, he received something closer to reluctant respect. It wasn't acceptance, but it was a bridge. He slept in his childhood bedroom that night, staring at the same glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling, and for the first time in weeks allowed himself to feel the full weight of exhaustion. Back in New York, the counteroffensive gained momentum. Rachel uncovered a small network of Troy's former associates who had benefited from the diverted funds. Shane authorized quiet settlements in exchange for sworn statements. Each document he signed felt like another chain breaking. Marcus organized an all-hands town hall where Shane addressed the team directly. No spin, just facts and a clear vision for the future. The applause that followed wasn't polite. It was genuine. Yet the nights remained difficult. Shane would wake at 3 a.m. reaching for a body that wasn't there, then lie awake replaying every conversation, searching for the moment he had missed the warning signs. Doubt crept in during those hours. Had his need to be loved made him blind? Was he any better than the man who had used him? One Thursday, he met Marcus for drinks at a quiet bar in Chelsea. Over craft beer, Marcus asked the question Shane had been avoiding. Have you considered that this whole mess might be the best thing that ever happened to you? Shane laughed without humor. That's one way to spin corporate fraud. I'm serious, Marcus said. You were coasting, man. Relying on Troy to fill the gaps you didn't want to look at. Now you're looking, and the company is stronger for it. You're stronger. The words lingered long after the bar closed. Shane walked home through the crisp night air, passing couples holding hands and groups of friends laughing under street lamps. For the first time, the loneliness felt temporary rather than permanent. He had friends. He had a company that still believed in him. And he had himself, the version that had survived the fall. The next morning, he received an unexpected email from Troy. No please this time, just a short note. I signed the papers. The money I could liquidate is in escrow. I won't fight you. I hope one day you can forgive me, even if you never speak to me again. Attached were scanned documents and a wire confirmation. Shane read it twice, then closed the laptop without replying. Forgiveness might come eventually, but not today. Today was for building. He spent the weekend in the office alone, redesigning the organizational chart. Key departments gained new leadership. Risk protocols tightened. A new diversity initiative appeared on the company roadmap, something Shane had always wanted but never prioritized because Troy had called it nice to have. Now it felt essential. Sunday evening, his sister texted a photo of their parents smiling at a neighborhood barbecue. Beneath it, she wrote, "They're proud of you, even if they don't say it right." Shane saved the picture and for the first time in years felt the distance between Texas and New York shrink just a little. Monday brought the first tangible victory. One of the offshore partners agreed to a full repayment schedule after receiving Shane's personal letter outlining potential SEC involvement. The funds would return within 90 days. Shane printed the agreement, pinned it to his office wall, and stood back to look at it. A single sheet of paper, but it represented months of quiet reclamation. That night he cooked dinner for one, simple grilled salmon and asparagus, and ate at the island while watching the city lights flicker on. The loft no longer felt haunted. It felt like home again. Winter arrived with a vengeance, blanketing Manhattan in snow that muffled the usual roar of traffic. Inside Apex Innovations, the atmosphere had shifted from cautious optimism to focused momentum. The board approved Shane's restructuring plan by a unanimous vote, something that would have been impossible 6 months earlier. Investors who had once hovered like vultures now sent congratulatory emails praising the decisive leadership. Shane spent long hours in the glass-walled strategy room with Rachel and Marcus, mapping the company's next 3 years. They expanded into sustainable fintech products, partnered with 2 nonprofits Troy had once dismissed as PR stunts, and launched an internal mentorship program that paired senior leaders with junior staff. Each decision carried the quiet satisfaction of building something that belonged entirely to Shane. One particularly cold afternoon, a courier delivered a small package to his office. Inside was a single key on a plain ring and a note in Troy's handwriting. The storage unit in Jersey City. Everything I took that wasn't money is there: art, furniture, the watch you gave me for our anniversary. It's yours now. No strings. Shane turned the key over in his palm, feeling the cool metal, then placed it in his desk drawer. He wouldn't visit the unit today. Maybe not ever. But knowing he could was enough. His mother called the following week, voice softer than usual. "Your father and I watched that interview you did with Bloomberg. You looked strong, like you knew exactly who you were." She paused. "We might not understand everything, but we see how hard you've worked. Come home for Christmas if you can." Shane promised he would try. The conversation ended without the usual undercurrent of tension, and he realized the distance he had always felt from his family had more to do with his own fear than their rejection. Growth, he was learning, happened in the smallest reconciliations. Meanwhile, Troy had disappeared from social media and mutual circles. A mutual friend mentioned in passing that he had moved to Chicago for a consulting gig. Nothing glamorous, just steady work. Shane felt no triumph, only the quiet closure of a chapter that had nearly destroyed him. In early December, the company held its annual holiday party at a rooftop venue overlooking the Brooklyn Bridge. Snow fell gently outside the glass walls while inside employees danced and toasted. Shane gave a short speech thanking the team for their loyalty through challenging times. When the applause died down, Marcus pulled him aside. "You did it, man. The ship is righted and sailing better than before." Shane smiled, genuine this time. "We did it. All of us." Later, standing alone on the heated terrace with a glass of champagne, he watched the city sparkle below. The young boss who had once begged for love had learned to stand on his own. The power he held now wasn't borrowed or gifted. It was earned through every sleepless night, every difficult conversation, every time he chose integrity over comfort. A soft voice interrupted his thoughts. "Mind if I join you?" Rachel stepped out, coat wrapped tight. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Then she said, "I know it hasn't been easy, but watching you these last months, you've become the leader I always knew you could be." Shane clinked his glass against hers. "Thank you for everything." The party continued inside, laughter spilling onto the terrace. Shane stayed a few minutes longer, letting the cold air clear his head. When he finally went back inside, the warmth wrapped around him like possibility. The weeks that followed brought more milestones. The returned funds cleared escrow. Legal proceedings against the remaining parties moved forward without fanfare. Shane even found time to start therapy, something he had resisted for years, where he unpacked the ways he had tied his worth to being needed. Each session peeled back another layer, revealing a man ready to love again, but only after learning to love himself first. By the time Christmas lights twinkled along Fifth Avenue, Shane had booked his ticket to Texas. He packed lightly, including the family photo he now kept on his desk. At the airport, he paused at the departure board, feeling the weight of the past 6 months settle into something manageable. The betrayal had been devastating, but the man who emerged from it was someone he finally recognized in the mirror, stronger, wiser, and undeniably in control of his own story. The Texas sun felt warmer than Shane remembered as he stood on his parents' porch Christmas Eve, watching his nieces and nephews chase each other through the yard. Inside the house, laughter mixed with the scent of cinnamon and pine. His father clapped him on the shoulder with a gruff, "Proud of you, son," that carried more meaning than any boardroom praise. His mother hugged him tight, whispering, "You're home." For once, the word didn't feel like a compromise. Back in New York after the holidays, the city welcomed him with fresh snow and renewed energy. Apex Innovations had just closed its strongest quarter ever. The board offered Shane a new 5-year contract with expanded equity. He accepted, but only after negotiating terms that included greater employee profit sharing and mental health resources, changes that reflected the lessons hard-won through betrayal. One quiet February evening, Shane sat in his loft reviewing the latest quarterly report when his phone buzzed with an unknown number. He almost ignored it, then answered. Troy's voice came through, quieter than he remembered. "I saw the Bloomberg piece. Congratulations. You did what I never could. You turned everything around." Shane waited, surprised by the lack of anger in his own chest. "Thank you." Troy exhaled. "I won't keep you. I just wanted to say I'm getting help too. Therapy. New city. Trying to be better. You deserved more than what I gave you." The line stayed open for a moment. Two men who had once shared everything, now sharing only silence. Finally, Shane said, "I hope you find what you're looking for." He meant it. After the call ended, he walked to the window and looked out at the glittering skyline. The man who had once crumbled under betrayal now stood taller because of it. Friends had become family. Family had become allies. The company that nearly broke him was now stronger than ever. And Shane Harrington, young boss of Apex Innovations, finally understood that real power wasn't about controlling others. It was about becoming the person no one could take advantage of again. He poured a glass of water, sat at the dining table, and opened a new document titled Next Chapter. The cursor blinked patiently while ideas flowed. International expansion, a foundation supporting LGBTQ+ entrepreneurs, perhaps even a book someday about resilience. The future stretched ahead, bright and entirely his own. Outside, snow continued to fall, blanketing the city in quiet possibility. Shane smiled at his reflection in the dark glass, confident, clear-eyed, whole. The journey had been painful, but every scar had become armor. Every loss had carved space for something better. And in the end, the young boss who had been used was no longer the man who needed saving. He was the one who had saved himself. True or false? Betrayal always destroys the person who suffers it.